Literacy is key. That's just it. Without literacy, things would be pretty difficult for all of us. I mean, I certainly would know. I certainly would know. Yes, certainly. Not being very literate has put me in some pretty bad situations before. A while ago, I broke up with my girlfriend of about 4 years. Pretty big mistake on my part, you know. I mean, at least that's how I feel. I still had feelings for her. I wanted to patch things up with her and, you know, be with her again, and I really missed her, so I decided I was going to write a letter to her explaining, you know, the things I was feeling and how I felt and how I wanted to get back with her and things like that, and, you know, give it to her. She worked as a hostess at a swanky restaurant downtown called Chipotle. And, you know, they're usually busy a lot, so I figured I'd make my way over on a time when I knew she'd have her break. So I made my way over to her job, and I walked up to her podium, and I handed her the letter, in an envelope, of course, and said, "Here, it's a letter for you. Open it." She opened it and started reading it, and as she read it, I could tell it was hitting her right in the feels. Her eyes got a little glassy, and she put her hand over her mouth and said, "Dante, oh my God," as she continued to read. And then she said she'd be right back and turned and ran into the restaurant. I was on cloud 9. She was going to come back to me. I was so happy I couldn't contain myself. I was going to get a second chance with her. She came back up to her podium and handed me the envelope back with the letter in it. I said, "Huh?" I was so confused. I opened the letter and saw that she had proofread it with a red pen. I was like, "You proofread my letter?" She looked at me and said, "Damn it, Dante. That's exactly why we couldn't work out. You're just too illiterate." I looked at her in shock. "What do you mean I'm too illiterate?" She started getting pretty irritated at that point and raised her voice and said, "You can't spell, you don't know how to use punctuation, you have the reading comprehension level of someone in 5th grade, you have no sense of multiliteracy, you don't seem to understand that in this day and age, we need to use different platforms of information and media to effectively learn. I mean, do you even own an iPad? A comic book? Have you ever seen a podcast? And don't even get me started on your oral literacy. You may think that you talk normally, but sometimes you sound like you were raised in a barn." I was kind of really hurt, man. I looked at her and I asked her straight up, "Why didn't you ever tell this to me before? Why now?" "Ugh, Dante, I've tried, but you've never listened to me. You just went in one ear and out the other because, once again, you have a terrible level of oral literacy. You hear what I'm saying, but you don't understand what I'm saying." She saw I was upset and tried consoling me. She put her arm around me and softly cooed into my ear, "Look, this doesn't mean that I don't miss you. I just moved on to Todd. His understanding of how literacy is important in the history content area just really turns me on." I was a mess at this point. "I just don't understand," I said. She gave me a disgusted look and said, "Of course you don't understand. You never understand." I couldn't take any more of it. She was making me really sad, so I just walked away. And as I was walking, she started shouting at me, "Yeah, Dante, run away! Run away like you usually do! Run away and don't come back until you understand how comedic monologues can explain the importance of literacy." What the hell that meant. I shouted back at her about how her job wasn't a real job. I mean, she worked at a damn Chipotle. What Chipotle has hostesses? Remember after that, I walked across town to my good buddy Trevor's house. I had texted him on the way telling him how bad I felt and the argument I just got into, so he was expecting how I'd be when I got there. We basically had a quick conversation. I told him what she had said to me, and he said, "Look, Dante, you clearly aren't comprehending the full situation here." I didn't really know what that word meant, so I was a little confused. I was like, "Comprehending?" And he was like, "Yeah, you really need to analyze your relationship with her and why it failed." I was so lost. I was like, our relationship didn't fail. I just broke up with her because I was stupid and I thought I didn't have any more feelings for her at the time. And they said, "Okay, that's good. But compare and contrast how easily you two broke up with how easily you parted ways with your past exes." I didn't know what the hell he was trying to tell me. I wanted to spit it out, whatever he was trying to say. I think he saw the blank look in my face because he asked me if I was able to deduce anything from the conversation we were having. I didn't understand. At that point, I realized that I had absolutely no understanding of academic language. And that academic language was an essential part of, you guessed it, literacy. Things are pretty much all around bad for me during that time. The things she said to me about Todd just ran through my head. I couldn't get over what she had said about Todd having an understanding of the importance of literacy and history. You know, what did he have that I didn't? I really thought about it, and the one person who probably knows how to explain how she operates best is her dad, Bob. So I got in contact with him and made my way over to his apartment. Then when I finally got to his place, I convinced him to talk to me about the importance of literacy and history. So he put on his glasses and pulled out some somehow pre-made speech and started reading it to me. Look, son. History is already a complicated subject to learn about. It's full of all sorts of facts and interpretations and contexts. You really need to think like an historian in order to get the closest possible idea to the truth. And notice I said closest possible. That's where literacy comes in. You need to be able to read all of the different types of texts and primary and secondary sources, and then draw conclusions from the details that you believe from each. And in order to properly get those details, that's where good reading comprehension comes in. You got to understand that you're reading and not just looking at words. And it's not just reading. You need sufficient oral literacy too. Sometimes the best way to learn something is to recite it, or maybe teach it to someone else, or even audio learning. You know, like learning from songs or speeches or recordings. But without oral literacy, you won't be able to properly understand or communicate these ideas to other people. And then there's writing literacy. Lots of research has proven that writing and repetition helps people to learn. How do you expect to learn from writing repetition if you don't have good penmanship or punctuation or spelling? Or even if you can't comprehend what you're writing on your own? You know? And let me get fancy and go back to multi-literacies. Education is continuously slipping into the future more and more every day. It's not enough to just read a textbook about the Roaring Twenties anymore. Now we need to start learning from other things, like reading comics. Have you ever read Mouse by Art Spiegelman? It can teach you a lot about the Holocaust, even though it's not a textbook. And because it's not a textbook, it'll probably engage you more and help you to learn the information easier. Look up articles on the web. Read a poem, interpret a picture. Make sure that you can learn from more than just a textbook, because multi-literacies can really jazz up your content knowledge. I guess what I'm trying to say is history is almost impossible without literacy and multi-literacies. You can read, say, or write something pertaining to history, but until you're literate, you won't understand it. Now take what I just told you and go and win back my